find you.
Well, you found
Thank
the
you
spot.
so much.
Welcome.
They
I'm
let
glad-
me in. 'Cause
Good
I
morning.
was with you.
Okay.
I'm behind you. Hi, how are you? Yes, I've met you before. It's good to see you again. Thank you guys for including me.
Good morning again.
Okay.
You know, I want to just start by saying how hurt I am. When I'm speaking alone, I usually have about a third of this side of an audience, and I notice those things. I am really pleased this morning to introduce Gary Chartrand. He's somebody I've known for a decade and not known well, but every time I'm around him, I like him better. So that's positive direction, Gary. I've sent a lot of material out, so I'm not going to waste time going over biographies and resumes. You can read all of that. So with nothing more ado, is that how to say it? Gary Chartrand. Thank you very much, Gary.
There. Got it. I think this is it. Yeah, good. Well, good morning. It's so nice to see such a good crowd. I'm sorry you don't get this kind of crowd, Bob, but keep working at it. Well, you know, I think education has really, especially with the Virginia election, has really kind of bubbled up to be maybe at the top of the list with what's going on in politics. And it's something that I've been engaged in for quite some time. I'm not a practitioner myself with education. I actually ran a company here in town, Acosta Sales and Marketing Company, and got out of that about 12 years ago. And we had sold the company, so we were sort of blessed with some financial resources. And my wife and my 2 children sat around the table and said, okay, we can afford to give back. We want to give back. Let's look at where the biggest issues are. And we, for years, kept reading about all the failing schools in specifically Duval County, and wanted to do something about it. So we put a foundation together, and education was our major focus. We started with bringing Teach for America here. Actually, Wayne Weaver and I worked on that together. We were able to bring them here, and they're still here, working in the schools. And then from there, we wanted to bring a charter school here that was well-known, that was high quality, and also worked mostly in the inner city. And so we found KIPP schools. KIPP has about 180 schools across the country. They were not in Florida at the time, 10 years ago. We begged them to come here, and they told us no several times because Florida had such low per pupil spending that it financially made it very difficult for them to actually exist here. And so they would say, like, we can go to New Jersey and get, $12,000 a kid, or we can come to Florida and get $7,000 a kid. So that was prohibiting them from wanting to come here, but we kept pounding the table. I actually remember went up to see the CEO at KIPP with John Payton at the time, who was mayor, and we brought Corinne Brown with us as well. And she was kind of feisty, and she took a hit with the unions because she really wanted KIPP to come here. And then, so anyway, they finally said yes. And then Corinne Brown talked to me later and said, look, you got to help me with my campaign because the unions cut me off. I'm not getting any more money for the union. So anyway, KIPP came here. We actually got a building donated to us at McDuff Avenue, a really tough section of town. It was actually the old racetrack where they would, race the dogs, and then they moved the dogs out. And then it became like a poker house, basically, and they simulcast, so it was a gambling spot. And Greyhound Racing actually donated the building to us. We retrofitted it, put about $9 million in, and today we have over 2,000 kids and 3 schools, and we're starting a high school, and predominantly African-American, like 99% African-American, free and reduced lunch. And nobody gets assigned to a charter school, so it's all opt-in, and we have a waiting list of over 1,000 kids. So the demand is certainly there. But I wanted to kind of give you an uplifting story today because Florida's been a great example of education reform and great results. Mike Bloomberg actually has set this meeting up because he wrote an article in the Wall Street Journal yesterday. And the first sentence of his article was the American public school system is broken. And we got to do something about it. And he's going to allocate $750 million to charter schools in 20 different cities. to try to get more high-quality schools, specifically in the inner city. So, this is the good story from actually Jeb Bush. And by the way, let me back up a little bit. So we got involved in education. One of the things that I really learned quickly was that education policy is set in Tallahassee. And so I got involved in that, and Governor Rick Scott was kind enough to appoint me to the State Board of Education. So I sat on the State Board for 8 years. I chaired it for 2 years and worked with our legislators to try to get the right kind of policies to make sure kids could thrive. And so did that for 8 years, and then as soon as I rolled off that, Governor Jeb Bush called me and asked me to go on his board. So I actually am on his board. He has a board, a nonprofit called Excel in Education, and he's trying to take the blueprint for Florida, which I'll cover with you, and spread it across the country. And so it's a $10 million operating budget. We have a huge staff, and we're working with state legislators across the country to try to make sure we have good education policy. In fact, last week, or 2 weeks ago, he had his annual conference. He invites the state legislators in. It was in Orlando this year. We had about 1,000 state legislators come to our conference, and we talked to them about the policies that are actually helping move kids along. So Governor Jeb Bush started in 1998, and he had put forth his A-plus plan. And for 2 decades, we've been outperforming the nation on both reading and math. Our graduation rates are actually up by 30 points. When he took office, 50% of kids did not graduate from high school on time. Today, that's well north of 80%. And then our college readiness has also gone through the roof as well. There's a quote here from a statistician that actually works for the National Center for Education Statistics, and her quote, I think, is pretty compelling. Something very good is happening in Florida. And it is. So if you look at, I don't want to read all of it to you, but, fourth grade reading, less than half the kids were proficient, or they were below proficiency. Fourth grade math, same thing. And then when you look fast forward 20 years, we ranked 6th in the nation for fourth grade reading, 4th in the nation for math. Advanced placement, we were the 10 worst states for taking any kind of AP courses. Today we're in the top 3, or ranked 3. As I mentioned, high school graduation rates went up more than 30 points, which is a significant accomplishment. He also was a big choice advocate and started the first charter school in Florida, actually. He and Will Fair in Miami started the very first charter school. And back in 1999, there were about 9,000 kids in charter school. And today, there's well over 313,000 kids in charter schools throughout the state. So opening up more high-quality charter schools, specifically in the inner city, I think is a good thing to give poor kids choice. And then, of course, we also have the vouchers here as well, and there's about 140,000 kids that take advantage of some kind of voucher. So if you're poor and you're assigned to a failing school that's been failing for years, the state gives you a voucher for about 95% of what it costs to educate a child, and you can go to a private school, including a religious school, which is what they have here in Florida. In fact, I was telling Bob that next week I got invited to go hear a Supreme Court case. Something I've always wanted to do, and it happens to be a case on school choice. So the state of Maine has a voucher program, and same situation. If you're poor and you're failing school, you can go to a private school, except you can't go to a religious school. So people have gotten together, and they're suing the state of Maine, and it's made its way all the way to the Supreme Court. And I think they're going to win with this makeup of the court, so it's good. So really good results. One of the things that is certainly when I was on the state board for 8 years, and something I've been pushing, is that kids are kids. They'll reach the level that the expectation you set for them. If you set it low, they'll meet it. If you set it high, they'll meet it too. And so we increased, going back over 20 years ago, raised the bar for high school graduation. And by the way, I read an article the other day that the state of Oregon is passed a law that if you just stay in high school, don't drop out, you automatically get a diploma, which is insane. But so we have high graduation rates. You have to pass the FSA 10th grade reading test in order to graduate high school. I think that's actually a good thing. So they said, oh, you're going to lose a lot of kids, minorities are going to drop out. This is what's happened. 42% of black children were graduating back in 1998. Today it's 82%. Hispanic, same thing. And the overall, it's gone from 52 to 87% graduation rate. So really good success story. I think it's really hard to be successful today if you don't finish at least high school. And certainly you need more than high school today with all the demand of the jobs that are out there. So, as I mentioned, we've been outpacing the country for 20 years. This is NAEP, that's the National Assessment of Education Progress, the test that's given every other year to a huge, large sample of kids in 4th and 8th grade. And since 1998, you can see that we, I guess it was right around 2002 or 2003, Florida surpassed what was happening across the country. And in fact, we were -7 points on the far left prior to Governor Bush. Today we're +6 points in 4th grade reading scores. So very good. We need to keep the pedal on that. You know, one of the things that Governor Bush put in was that, you know, holding kids back in 3rd grade if they can't read. And because, you know, just keep moving them along doesn't help. And so we need to continue to focus on that. I particularly think that we need to focus more on early literacy and VPK up through 3rd grade. One of the things that we do in Florida is we start testing in 3rd grade. So there's no test in kindergarten, 1st or 2nd. And what happens a lot of times, just human nature, is the school system puts their best teachers in 3rd grade because they want good test scores. And when you really need them in 1st and 2nd grade to make sure they can pass the test on 3rd. But we're working on that. Hopefully we can get something changed there. And then this happens to be 4th grade math. Again, we were -7 +6. Very good results on both reading and math. And then on 8th grade, we were -6 points versus the national average, and today we're at +1 on 8th grade. And then on math, we still have work to do. We were -7, we're still -2. So 8th grade math, we're still actually behind what the nation is doing. So what's the Florida formula? What worked? And what is it that we're trying to convince other states to do? So first of all, school and student accountability. You have to hold people accountable. If you don't hold people accountable, you're not going to get the results. And you got to measure. And if you don't measure, you don't know where you are. And so one of the things that Jeb Bush put in place was an A through F schooling grade system on grades 3 through 10. Based on the assessments from grades 3 through 10. School recognition and financial incentives, so incent what's working. So if you take an AP class, you know, boom, put money into that school so that they'll continue to do good things. Early literacy, very important. Make sure that the kids can read by 3rd grade. I've read, you've probably read, they decide how many prisons they need going out in the future based on 3rd grade reading scores. 85% of prisoners throughout the United States dropped out of high school. Most of them can't read. It's a real problem for society. So we need to do something about it. Increase the graduation standards, and then also had multiple pathways for teachers' certification. So we get more like retired folks that want to go, you know, retired military that want to go teach. Get them through the system fairly quickly and get them certified. And make sure that they're high quality. And then education opportunity is critical. First, statewide voucher program for kids to come out of failing schools. We have the McKay Scholarship, which is a voucher program for kids with special needs. So if you have an IEP program, you can actually go get a McKay Scholarship and go to a school that's maybe better for your child, that's giving you more attention with that particular special need that you have. And then, of course, we have the tax credit scholarships for low-income students. And the way that works is we do have a state, an income tax for businesses in the Florida, not for individuals, thank goodness. But you can actually check a box. So if you're a business and you owe $100,000 to the state of Florida based on your income, it's a 5.5% tax, you can check a box and have that money go to this tax credit scholarship. And it's administered by a third party, and it's called Step Up for Students. And there's 140,000 kids that take advantage of that, which is awesome. So if we assign kids to schools, right? That's what we've been doing forever. So if you're in a failing school, sorry, have a nice life. This gives those kids that are in that failing school an opportunity to get out of there and go to a school that's going to serve them much better. Charter school policy has been great. Actually, one of the things that we passed when I was on the board chair, was the School of Hope program, which incented high-impact charter schools from other states that did really good work in the inner city to come to Florida and open up shop here. We recruited the Idea Schools out of Austin, Texas. They have a 100% graduation rate. They've been in business for quite some time. They're opening 20 schools in Tampa, and they're going to be opening 12 schools in Jacksonville. So the first school is going to open actually on the JU campus. They actually bought 10 acres from JU, and they're going to put a school in Arlington, and then they're going to put one over on 103rd Street to get started. And that'll open up next year. So that's a good thing. And then, of course, we were the first state in the country to make pre-K universal. So every 4-year-old gets free pre-K. And that's done through the private sector. It's not through the public sector. And then, of course, we have the Gardner Scholarships as well, which is the largest education savings account program in the country. And that's kids with severe disabilities that need extra help. And then, of course, college and career pathways. Dual enrollment is something that was passed as well. So you can get your associate's degree, your 2-year associate's degree in high school. If you take accelerated courses, the state pays for it. If you get an associate's degree in high school, by statute, you have to be accepted into one of the Florida universities. So it's a great program. It saves a lot of money. If you get your associate's degree in high school, the state pays for it. You don't have to pay for it. Now you only have to go 2 years to college instead of 4 years to college because you've gotten your associate's degree. So that's a great thing as well. Okay, so trends and challenges. You may have noticed that charters are actually under attack. And we can have that discussion and debate if you want later. But actually, one of our own congresswoman in Tampa was trying to cut the funding in the federal, the amount of money that the federal government gives to charter schools. And her position was that we want to make sure that for-profits get any money, or any nonprofit charter school, if they employ or outsource any of their activities, whether it be the cafeteria or janitorial service, for a for-profit company, they would get cut out. So that's ludicrous in my mind. Hopefully we can get that out of the bill. And then in Hillsborough County, Tampa, this was kind of alarming. Actually, Addison Davis is the superintendent down there, who was in Jacksonville, so I know him quite well. And I called him and I said, what's going on? Because there were 6 charter schools that were in good financial standing. They also had good grades. And in the state of Florida, you have to go be recertified. And there were 3,600 students, and they just wouldn't recertify them, which was interesting. And so the state got involved, the commissioner got involved, and threatened to hold funds back from them, and they reversed their decision. But, you think about all the parents. This was in June. So, school starts in August, so all of a sudden you're reading the paper. 6 schools that your kids are going to are not going to get recertified, they're going to close. And now they got to scramble to try to figure out where their kids go to school. Very unnecessary for, the angst that they cause. So we're going to attack that issue at the state this year. Session starts January 7th, I think, and go to automatic renewals, 5 or 10-year automatic renewals if you're in good standing versus every single year getting recertified. And then there's the culture wars. The 2 big issues, of course, are, critical race theory, and the governor was very strong on this and, insisted through executive order that we don't teach critical race theory in our schools. I was with the governor last week. He's adamant about that, and that'll actually come into session as well to try to be codified into statute that we won't teach critical race theory. And then the mask. There's been a big fight about masks, right? And he believes that because of the Parents' Bill of Rights, that the parent has the right on both health care and on education, and that we shouldn't have a mask mandate. And so that we had some school districts, actually I think Duval County, who said we're going to issue a mask mandate anyway, even though the governor said we can't, and so they sued the governor, and that's an issue that, you know, unfortunately became politicized. Personally, if I was governor, I think I would have pushed it to the superintendent, let them make the decision. If you're spiking, you know, put the mask on. If you're not spiking, you don't need the mask. Let them make the local decision. And Republicans typically like local control. So, but that's what he did. So he's the governor. He gets to do it. And then just a little bit about education policy in the year ahead. You know, we've got an early session year. So we start January 11th. It's also an election year, so you tend to have less bold reform when you have an election year. So that's going on. You've got the census that you know, the congressional and legislative races will hinge on redistricting. Where we are in Florida, Republicans hold a 78-42 majority in the House and 24-16 in the Senate. So we'll see how that. Actually, I think the state of Florida has had the executive branch in the House and Senate for like 20 years, about 20 years. DeSantis has got a pretty good job approval rating. Charlie Crist is running again, and I guess the agriculture commissioner is running. So we'll see how the session turns out. I've got a list of things. I met with the governor last week. Gave him my list. We're on the same page on most of the stuff, so that's a good thing. He wants to replace the Florida standard test that we have out there. A lot of people are concerned about high-stake testing. I'm a little concerned about that because I think we do need to test our children to understand where they are. In fact, I was at ExceLNL, Jeb Bush's conference, and we had a separate board meeting, and the Walton Foundation was there. They hired an agency to do a poll across the country, whether it's Republican or Democrat. Like 75% of parents want their kids tested so they know where they are. And so what he wants to do, though, and I don't think it's a bad thing, is use some summative assessments. So there would be 3 tests. The first one would tell the teacher where the child is and what needs to be improved. Then the second one as well. And then the third one would actually be the test that counts towards the school grade. So I was a little concerned that if we use all 3 tests, then we're going to have 3 high-stake tests. But that isn't the case. So that's going to be taken up at the legislature this session as well. So this is sort of the last slide, but for session this year, which starts January 11th, there's a bill to convert school board elections from nonpartisan to partisan so that you declare whether you're a Republican, Democrat, or independent. Critical race theory being codified in law to not be taught in K through 20 schools. Automatic renewals of high-performing charters, which I covered earlier. And then allowing districts to innovate as well. You know, we allow charter schools to innovate. We don't think we do as much for the district schools, so I'm very much for that. Let's try new things, right? If it's not working, you don't want to keep doing the same thing. Expanding private school choice options through the Hope Scholarships in underperforming schools. I think they're going to continue to expand that. And then, you know, prohibiting masks in schools is a big deal. It wouldn't be on my list, but it's on the list. Reading scholarship accounts K through 2. That's a big one because, like I said, you know, we don't test until 3rd grade, and we need to make sure that K1 and 2, that we have the right instruction for these kids to read when they show up for 3rd grade. And the last one is there's a bill out there to make the Commissioner of Education a statewide elected official versus appointed. They're appointed now by the state board, which is really appointed by the governor, because the governor appoints all the state board members, so he kind of tells you what he wants you to do. So it works. It's just how it works in America. And I'm against that. I don't think we need an elected official for that job. By the way, the Secretary of Agriculture is elected, the CFO is elected, the Attorney General is elected, So like, what's the governor going to do? I think we hold them accountable for education. I wouldn't put that into a political role. So that's the end of my slideshow. 25 minutes.
Thank you very much.
And we can do a little Q&A if you'd like. Education is really, you don't get to go first, I'm sorry. It's a passion of our family because, and here's why. Here's the why. I don't think you can reach your God-given potential today in our society without being well-educated. If you're not well-educated, you're going to end up at the bottom of the rung with a ladder and never get up the ladder. So for each individual, everybody's special in the eyes of God. Let's make sure every kid gets a quality education so they have a shot. That's number one for us. Number two, it's a national security issue. I mean, and I think it's important for democracy. And we want a well-educated citizenry. And if we don't have that, we have enough problems that we're trying to solve. We need well-educated people doing that. Yes.
Could you please define critical race theory?
Yeah, I can. I know. This is something I've read about it, that it was taught at the college level, and you hear different spectrums of it. Actually, Nikolai Vitti, who was the superintendent of schools for Duval County, is now in Detroit, and I saw a video that said, "Damn right, we're going to teach critical race theory. We need to teach critical race theory." So there's two sides of the coin. And there's also the 1619 Project. When it goes too far to me is when you start telling kids that if you're white, you're an oppressor. If you're not white, you've been oppressed. I think it's the worst thing you could tell a child, personally. So I think it's going to be a hard thing to police in the schools. But it's the idea of really teaching how oppressed non-white people have been throughout the history of America. Yeah. Yes.
Okay. I got it. All right. I was interested in your expectations, what you expect young people to do in terms of getting higher grades. Because I think what we have is a chain effect here. If early on you have an easy education and you have an easy graduation rate, and it even extends to business, where businesses now are very much involved in this whole thing of equity and all that stuff. You're hired not because you're the best, you're hired because you are what you are. And then they reach the point of promotion within the organization. I've seen this personally.
Yeah.
So if you early on get used to the fact that I can get moving up there and keep doing it, it's easy and so on, it reaches a point where you don't make it and you're out of the business that maybe you want.
Yeah. Look, I think we need to have high expectations, high standards for all children. All children. We shouldn't lower the bar. And kids, they're poor, they can't learn. I don't buy into that. They have challenges. We need wraparound services for them, perhaps. But I think we should keep our standards high. If you tell a kid that they're proficient in reading and they're really not, you basically lied to that child and to the parent. So, actually, if you look at NAEP and the cut scores, so when you run a test, you have cut scores. So you have level 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And when I was chair, I raised the cut scores, and I wanted to raise them higher, but the governor really wouldn't let me. Because what was going to happen was school grades were going to go down and it becomes political, right? But if we're not being honest, we are actually 20 points behind where our proficiency level is versus NAEP. Okay, so we need to, now when they do the new FSA, they're going to have a chance to raise the cut scores, and I hope they do raise the cut scores so that we're really truthful and honest and accountable. We'll see if the politicians have the will to do it. Will be the interesting piece. because you'll get more family schools. But in terms of the workplace, look, I think we need to be diverse. I think diversity is a good thing. I don't think we should be giving somebody a job if they're not qualified. Let's make sure they're qualified first, but let's focus on being more diverse, is what I would say. Yes.
You haven't mentioned anything about teachers' unions and the whole effect that they may have on this. And the second question is, do we still have parent-teachers associations, and do they have any influence?
Yeah. So I would say nationally, the teachers' union are very, in different cities, obviously stronger than others. But in my opinion, this is just my opinion, the teachers' union, not the teachers, but the union itself, has done more to harm America than any other organization that's out there, in my opinion. First of all, here's my philosophy. I don't think a monopoly is good. We have the FTC to make sure that nobody has such concentration of power, right, in the consumer world. I remember when I was in the food business, Nestle's wanted to buy Ralston Purina. It was a $10 billion cash deal, and the FTC said, no, you're going to have too much concentration of cat food. So Ralston Purina had to divest their Meow Mix brand in order to make the deal work. But we have a concentration of government-run, union-backed schools. So why is that good? If it's not good in the consumer sector, why is it good in the public sector for public education? So I'm an education pluralist. I think we should have more choice. And it's interesting because as a democracy, we're an outlier. Most democracies around the world, the government funds education, they hold education accountable, but they don't necessarily run the school. So in the Netherlands, there's 36 different kinds of schools, including religious schools, that get funded by the government, and they allow the parent to choose the best school for their kid. So I think education pluralism is, and by the way, prior to the mid-19th century, we had that. It was really the immigration or anti-immigration in the mid-19th century of mostly Catholics coming in. Those damn Catholics, you know. And they were opening up all these Catholic schools. And the Protestants said, hey, this isn't right. So they came up with what's called the Blaine Amendment. They took it to Washington. Washington did not pass it. They took it to the states, and 37 states have what's called the Blaine Amendment, which is you can't take tax dollars and fund religious schools. And that's a big challenge right now, and that's what that Supreme Court case is all about next week, state of Maine. But teaching unions, look, I get it. They're there to represent teachers. They're not necessarily there to represent kids. They're out there, I mean, you know, but as McAuliffe said, parents aren't supposed to get involved in education.
Quick question on.
Lost in the election. Yes.
I noticed one of the things that you mentioned that Florida does is to have the opportunity for 4-year-olds to do pre-regular education work. I also noticed that in some of the bills that are being proposed from the federal government, they're doing the same things, pre-K education. What's your opinion on the appropriate division of federal versus state versus local responsibility for education?
Well, I'm a big believer that the states should set their own education policy. The federal government actually does fund a lot of education, though, and when funding comes along, guess what? The rules come with it. There's a big building in Tallahassee, there's 1,400 people in this education department, and the majority of those people are there to provide all the reporting to the federal government to make sure we get their money, even though their money is sort of a smaller piece. So I just think education policy should be set at the state level. Now, if they want to give us money, we'll take it, but make sure it's not. But they seem to be handing out a lot of it lately, don't they? Yes, Bob, you can speak now.
Wait, hold on.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I've got
Oh, hang on.
Hang on now.
I've got a mic.
I know.
Is that what you're waiting for?
Wait, that person.
You'll be next.
We have a live person here. I have 2 comments.
Yeah.
CRT, for my knowledge, is not taught anywhere under postgraduate. So it's a species issue, it's been politicized, it's stupid.
Yeah.
Number two, what are we doing about failing public schools?
Failing public schools? So, it's hard to close a school. I haven't kept up totally with it, but when I was on the state board, if you were failing, or you had, I think it was 3 Ds or whatever, you could probably answer this question better, Kelly, but you had to have a turnaround plan. So you had to go in front of the state board and explain what you're doing. I'm going to change the principal, or I'm going to do this or do that. And they would stay in turnaround until they came out of turnaround. I wish we had a little bit more bite there to be able to not close the school, perhaps, but maybe turn it over to somebody that's qualified to do it. There are a lot of turnaround charter schools that'll go in and turn around a school. But it's almost impossible to close a school. But St. Johns County doesn't have that problem. St. Johns County, by the way, is the #1 school district in the state of Florida.
And I didn't introduce her, but I should have. Kelly, maybe you want to stand up. She's
Yeah.
a school board member of the St. Johns County School Board.
Mm-hmm.
And
Thank
as
you.
a visitor, they had me wear a mask.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm wearing a mask, because as a visitor, they asked me to do so.
Okay,
Well, but you'll get fined. They'll keep your money. They won't pay you.
we have a question here.
Because I'm the
I
only
think
one.
so much of what you said was wonderfully positive, but I
We
was
don't want
curious
to-
about two of the graphs on those 0.6 and 0.7 things. The last few years looked like instead of headed up, they were headed down,
Yeah.
and I wonder what was the problem?
That's a good observation. I think it's time to raise standards again, because every time you raise the standards, I think the kids will react. So that's what happens when you don't. It's sort of flatline. So the state board will have a chance to set new cut scores with the new evaluation that will come out in 2023, and I'm hoping that they'll raise those cut scores.
You're holding it? He's holding it. I'm very impressed with what's happened to the state of Florida in the years that I've lived here. But we live in St. Johns County. You just mentioned St. Johns County, I think, is #1 of the public schools in the state. And what's happening in St. Johns County in terms of charter schools and so forth? Do we need them? Do we have them?
So, I do most of my work in Duval County. I live in St. Johns County, but St. Johns County doesn't, I'm sure you have your challenges, but they don't have the challenges because of demographics, really, that Duval has. I don't know, do we have any charter schools in St. Johns?
We do.
Yeah.
And we have a Montessori school that we support. We work very closely with, side by side.
Okay,
We
just a
have.
second. Hold on, Kelly.
Hang on.
We really have to have the microphone.
I'm sorry.
Hold this very close to you.
We do have charter schools. We have 3 of them. We have one in particular. We have 2 that work with special needs children. We also have one that works is a Montessori model, and we absolutely support them. We work very closely with them. Our administration works closely with them. When their grades drop, we are all a part of helping them bring the grades up, because in St. Johns County, they're all our kids, all of them. And so we have a great relationship, and the Montessori brings an aspect of education that traditional public education doesn't. We offer a lot of choice in St. Johns County, and students have a lot of different avenues with different programs, but Montessori is one that we don't offer, that is offered through the charter, and our school district's very supportive of it. And St. Johns County does not teach critical race theory.
I've got
Just get that on the
a
record.
comment and a question. The comment is actually a benefit of the teacher union seniority system. And I've been a guardian for many years in Duval County. And so you have the new teachers coming in on fire, excited, and they get assigned to the failing schools. And I've had children in first grade of these failing schools with an on-fire young teacher, and they've learned to read in first grade. My question, is any chance of a Crystal Ray School? And I guess in terms of information, a Crystal Ray School is essentially a go to school 3 days and work a day. It's a kind of a co-op high school.
Very familiar with it. Tried to get it here actually a few years ago. Worked with the bishop on it. We weren't able to get it done, but I think it's a great model. It's in Chicago and a few other cities, but they teach kids how to work in addition to, and the money that they earn actually goes towards their tuition. So it's a great program.
Who opposes it?
I think it was more of a funding issue on trying to get it here. It was a big capital campaign, and you know, there's 100 capital campaigns going on all the time. Yes. Yeah. Oh.
Okay. What is the structure of this school system that you're talking about in terms of the grade school, middle school, high school, type of thing? But if that be the case, what is the curriculum in high school?
The curriculum is actually, so the standards of what you should learn, what you need to know, is set at the state level. The curriculum is set at the local school board level. So they get to choose which curriculum you want, what they want. So there's several different curriculums for math and reading, and that's set at a local level.
But it's all state approved.
What's that?
It's all state approved.
It has to be state approved, right? Yeah.
But my point is, are we training these kids or are we educating them?
Well, I hope we're educating them, you know. I think it's important to make kids aware of the facts, you know, but I don't think we should be indoctrinating them with ideology.
No. For example, there's an old saying, if you don't understand history, you're bound to repeat it.
Okay.
So do you teach ancient history?
That's the curriculum for ancient history, yeah.
What math do they get?
Which one?
Math?
Math, yeah, there's different kinds of math curriculums, so I don't know which one you use. There's a Eureka, which one do you guys use, Doug?
We use, we don't use Eureka, we use, I can't think of it off the top of my head.
But there's several,
Yeah.
and the local school board makes that decision.
And what about English?
We have partners.
Same thing.
Yeah.
Same thing as what?
The local school board makes that decision, which curriculum they use.
So they may or may not know anything about Shakespeare?
No, they have to be approved by the state. So you can't just teach some kind of curriculum that's not approved by the state.
But what does the state approve?
That's
My point is, what is being taught versus, but to me, I'm just a little Spanish guy, I guess, but it seems to me that I learned about Shakespeare. I've talked to people younger than I who think Shakespeare was a shortstop on the Boston Red Sox.
Or Red Sox fan, I've never heard.
I think they're high school graduates type of thing. And so that seems to be a difference.
Yeah, I don't know every single curriculum that's out there in the state. You could probably address it, but I
Usually
think...
Shakespeare is in middle school.
What's that?
Usually Shakespeare is in middle school.
Middle school, yeah.
And then it's expanded with your AP literature, and as you go on in high school.
Good thing Kelly's here. Yes.
Thank you for being here today. Besides the educational benefits of charter schools, does it encourage integration?
You know, that's a good question. You know, because the KIPP school is like 99% African American, and so it's not integrated. But again, they choose to go there, right? So nobody assigns them to that school. It's all based on choice. So that is a little bit of a concern, but it depends on the neighborhood, right? So, you know, you're going to attract kids mostly from around your neighborhood, right? And we went through the busing piece where we bus kids in, that didn't work. So that's one of the issues with it, that it is a watch out.
As a guardian, I actually had a white girl at the KIPP school in first grade.
Okay.
Her mother wanted her there and felt that it was a much better education than the public school.
Yeah.
So that's why you got 1% as opposed to the 0.
And we will take anybody that wants to, I mean, we have a waiting list, but we don't, yeah.
In your clip,
it showed one school, and I can't remember exactly where it was, but it showed them graduating from high school.
Right.
And going up with their diplomas and displaying what college they were going to go to. So it's kind of a two-part question. Are they all on scholarships? Because there were some amazing schools that those kids were going to. And secondly, is it always the goal to have a 4-year college degree, but not particularly to be trained for a trade?
Yeah.
What about trade training?
This is a great point, and there's been, I think maybe we've gone overboard. Like everybody has to go to college, and what's happened with the trade. You need electricians and plumbers, and those are all great jobs as well. So I think there's been a refocus on that right now because they kind of did away with it, and everybody's got to go to college. And
Stand up again.
the one thing that is definitely you can't argue with, if you will, on stats is the most reliable piece of data shows you that if you go to and through college, your income is substantially higher than if you don't, right? So that's why sort of the push to that. It doesn't mean that it's right for every child, right? So I think we need that balance, and we need to make sure, like in Germany, they call the game like in 10th grade. Okay, you are going to college, you are going to trade school. I don't know if we want to do that. But I do think we need more of an emphasis on it.
How do you prepare a black kid for entering the white world?
That's above my pay grade. I don't know. Yeah. I mean, look, I think there's so much to... One of the things that I've learned in this work is it doesn't matter your color. But poverty itself is a major challenge, right? It just is. It comes with trauma. You see the boyfriend beat up the mother, gunshots. I mean, there's a lot of trauma in the inner city. I think the parents need to have a role in that to make sure. I was taught that if you get stopped by the policeman, you keep both hands on the steering wheel. You don't go reach in the glove compartment until they tell you to go get it, and say yes, sir. Those kind of things I think are important. And then in the business world, I think exposing them to more opportunity to vision. You don't know what you don't know, right? So trying to explain to them through videos, through maybe even, school trips, what the opportunities are for you and what steps do you need to take to get there.
Sports are helping.
I'm sorry?
Sports are helping. High school sports.
Sports, yeah. Right. Well, here's this issue. I'm meeting with somebody that, actually is a former NFL player that started a foundation that wants to work with young black males that are in sports that think that they're all going to go play at this, the highest level, and they don't pay attention to their schoolwork. And he's trying to say, hey, wait a minute, it's a very small percentage. There's also a young man, his name is Travis Pickney, and College Red is the name of his foundation that we support. And he goes into Rains and Reball in the inner city and shows them all the different opportunities for employment down the road. And then if you want to do this, these are the steps that you need to take. You got to take your ACT, you got to take your SAT, you got to take this course, you got to take that course. Because a lot of the parents don't know. So we need more mentors that know, that can help them be ready for the work world. One of the organizations that I started a few years ago was a STEM Hub. And it came out of really the state board when we didn't have computer science standards. And I'm like, geez, the world is changing in such a fast pace. We better make sure that we're teaching our kids 21st century skills. And we weren't. When we started the STEM Hub, there was one high school in Jacksonville that taught AP computer science. There's 17 high schools in Jacksonville. One. And here we are in the 21st century, and artificial intelligence and all the computerization, we need to, now, not every kid is going to go down that path, but you need to expose them to it. So we put coding into the curriculum in several schools, worked with a company called, a nonprofit called Code.org, that's training up teachers. We've trained over 1,000 teachers to be able to teach this curriculum. And now all 17 high schools in Duval County are teaching AP Computer Science. Because we trained up teachers to be able to teach it. Part of the problem is, if you're really good in computer science, you're probably not a teacher at $45,000 a year. You're probably making $150,000 working for, Microsoft or whatever. So that's a challenge too.
You have a question?
Yeah.
Right. Somebody asked the question about curriculum, and I know in St. Johns County we have the academies that children can apply to in high school. Can you speak a little bit about that? Is that statewide?
I think it's district by district. Each district gets to choose those, if they want to start those academies, they can do it.
If they want to have academies?
If they want to have academies, yeah. Kelly?
Thank you. So St. Johns County has multiple academies at each of our high schools, and they vary by high school. So for instance, right now, because we have a teacher shortage nationwide, and certainly in the state of Florida, we're doing a soft opening of a teaching academy at Ponte Vedra High to offset. Also, we have the Biotech Academy at Ponte Vedra High, and we have the Business and Marketing, International Business Marketing and Logistics Academy. So what we do is we work real closely with CareerSource to see what the high need in this area is. The brand new high school that's going to open up 210 is going to have a veterinary academy, which is really novel. We have an aerospace academy at St. Augustine High. We have IT academies at Creekside, engineering academies at Nice, communication, and so it goes on and on and on. And it really gives. We've got construction academies, and one of the things that I want everyone to know is when you ask if we educate or train, we do both. Because with our academies, we actually train for skills. And so kids also have the ability to, every single academy has a workforce track that if you want to go directly into the workforce that you can plug into, and it has a college track so that whatever that career is, to follow the college track. And so students have the opportunity. As you said, the industry certifications, offering that, we have students who are coming out of high school with really strong industry certifications that can get them jobs while they're in high school as a side job, and can also get them jobs right out of high school. And it's been in the last 10 years, and it is absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
The students are on fire, and their parents are on fire for their opportunities. And then the last thing I'll say is in St. Johns County, we also have First Coast Technical College, which is all about workforce education. And we have quite a number of students who attend at that location. And that location has the auto mechanics, it has, LPN. We have a medical academy at Pedro Menendez as well, but we have all types of programs that students can take, similar to what you said, where they're at school for their school classes, and they go to FCTC for their technical skills class.
We have 67 counties in the state of Florida, and each county has to have their own school district. It was in the Constitution. Some debate whether that's a good way to go about it or not, because like Miami-Dade has 250,000 kids in their system. We have 130,000 in Duval County. In Jefferson County, there's 700 kids, right? And they have a school board. And anyway, there's a lot of debate about, is it too big? Should we do it a different way? But you're going to have to change the Constitution, which is not easy to do in Florida.
Next question here.
Oh.
How do you get really good teachers and lively teachers, and you don't pay them?
Yeah.
I think that's the problem. And when you talk about the NEA, they have helped through the years push the
salary up
Yeah.
for teachers.
Yeah. So I agree with you. I think teachers are underpaid. Great teachers are really underpaid. Mediocre teachers probably are not underpaid. And part of the challenge with the NEA is there's no differential. And I think it's, I've been in business, and I know that running a school system is different than a business, but when you are really great and you make the same amount of money as somebody who's going through the motions, that's a problem. And you can never be great if you allow mediocrity to exist in an organization. And that's what the teachers union has done. I would tell you that I think they've done more harm than good on teacher pay, because they won't bend on that issue. And so that's my personal feeling. You can debate it. The governor did raise the teacher salary to $47,500. Each county was setting the rates for teachers. So 67 different starting salaries. And in some of these smaller rural communities, the starting salary was like $35,000. 4 years of college, $35,000. I don't know where the food stamp cutoff is, but it's ridiculous. So I am for putting more money into teachers and getting great teachers. But I'm also for moving out those that are not good.
Gary?
I agree with that.
Yeah, it's hard to get done though.
Yes, I agree with that. In some ways, we need to set different kinds of standards. Teachers have to keep going back to school. That's one part of it. And teachers should get recertified.
And they do.
For a certain amount of years.
Yeah, well, she said teachers should go back to school, professional development. Interesting enough, the teachers union doesn't do anything for professional development. 95% of the money that's collected by the teachers union goes to political candidates. It's a PAC. That's all it is. It's a PAC. So they are doing harm, in my opinion. Yes.
Okay. We're talking a little bit about how to raise the level of, let's say, the inner city kids. The area of extracurricular activity, how is that addressed in these programs that you cover?
So the after-school programs, basically?
Because they're not even, obviously. I'm saying not every school can do the same amount.
Right. And that's a challenge too, right? There's still a lot of work to be done. And I think to get the playing field up, it's probably going to need wraparound funding. I used to hear this at the state board all the time. We have an allocation for busing. Well, you get a huge rural community with just a few kids and it's a per student amount, they can't make it work. So every district's a little bit different, and I think we need some flexibility there to help with that. But extracurricular activities, I think, are really important. I personally believe sports is very important, but not just solely sports. I played a lot of sports in high school, and I think what it did for me is it made me get good grades, because my mom said, if you don't get good grades, you're not playing sports, right? And she meant it, by the way. She took me off the 8th grade baseball team because of my grades. And I was a catcher, and I played American Legion baseball, and I always used to kid her that it was that year that I was going to learn how to hit. And but she was tough, and I came off the team, and it woke me up.
Okay, question?
I had a couple of experiences in the secondary school level. And one of them was I was the head of the teachers, local school, head of the teachers union. And so therefore twice a year I went to the NEA, big conferences that were local. This is Illinois. And back when it was really a state. But what I found was every time I went to one of those NEA-sponsored conferences, that just as you suggested, that it was how can you get more money, more programs, and things like this. rather than looking at it from the viewpoint of a local school board. And so I was also head, as I said, head of the teachers union. And so I came back and after the second meeting of the year, and I said, if we want better salaries, then we have to give something back. So when I go and I presented all this that was my duty to present to the board, and I said, we can convince the board if we will further education of all the teachers. Nobody is immune from a salary schedule like that. Anyway, there were other things where we were offering more to the board. And so put the schedule together, and it was decided among school boards that our school had the best salary schedule of any of the others in the county. And secondly, I had some experiences with integration in school. I went to Eastern Illinois University and had to grow up in Charleston, Illinois, where it's located. And when I went to school, excuse me, I rented a home that would house 8 students. And so I decided that I should have 4 whites and 4 blacks. That was the only one in the school that did that. And I had to get special permission to do it, but they approved it. And so I'd grown up in that town, so I knew the people that were in the whole neighborhood. And they said to me right off, when they heard this, they said, Robert, I heard you're going to have black boys in your rental home. And I said, sure enough. And I said, we don't want that here. And I said, well, you're going to find out that these guys are just like the white guys. And if you get, and we only live half a block away from the campus, so I said, you'll find out that there's no problem there, and it's a great benefit for all of you. You won't know that till later. So anyway, 2 years later, I graduated and was changing the situation for the home, and so I moved on with graduation, and then the people that were coming in refused to have the black boys. And so the same people that came to me when I first started, that we don't want those black boys here, came and said that I heard that we're not going to have those black boys anymore. And why not? And I said, well, that's the university rule. So it didn't last very long, but I gave it the old try. And my point in all this is that if more people would be inventive about how they can introduce black, particularly in college, I'm just talking about college here, if they would just give it more effort, they would have something that would grow, hopefully nationwide, and we would introduce people at that level of education.
Hey, I think we've come a long way. I think there's more work to be done. So good for you for doing that. I mean, I think the fact that it went sour is history, and we need to do a better job of making sure that every child has equal value. White, black, brown, doesn't matter. Yes?
do the elementary teachers feel about the value of pre-K?
Hold on a second.
Oh, hang on a second.
How do the elementary teachers feel, or what is their opinion of pre-K and the value of it?
The value of pre-K?
Yes. Do
We're
they
going to go to
think
Kelly for this.
Oh, okay, fine.
So St. Johns County, and our teachers absolutely love our students going to VPK and pre-K. We have, at Crookshank Elementary, we have a large VPK program, and even over at Ocean Palms, we have a pre-K program. And we work real closely with our education, St. John's Education Foundation, which has a FLY, which is the first 5 years working to get students to read and get them fluent before they start school. And then we also work with Wilson's, before Wilson's, it started with the H Hospital.
Wilson's Hospital.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And they have the Bright Stars program, and which helps, we put testing out in the community to identify students who maybe have special needs early, so that we can capture them early. Because as you said, by third grade, we want them reading actually in kindergarten and first grade. Because if they're not reading in third grade, it's too late. So we are very proactive on that. I think the legislature this year is going to be very proactive on that. And it's costly. It's like busing. It doesn't pay for itself.
Right.
But
it's worth it though?
it is so worth it, and we absolutely embrace it and want to continue every year try to expand it, even though it's not something that pays for itself. Because what you get paid for is half a day, and we make it a full day.
Right. Yeah, it's, by the way, the commissioner, Richard Corcoran, who I know well, I worked with him when he was Speaker of the House, that's a big hot button for him. He wants to invest more in 4th through 2nd grade so that kids are ready in the 3rd grade. That's a big deal. Yes?
We have time for one more question.
You have a question, too.
I might have.
Okay, there are many,
We'll save him for last.
there are many movies and some TV shows that show the lack of discipline in school. Is that just for promotion for Hollywood, or is it, how is discipline in the charter schools?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I'm not an expert on discipline. It's probably a good thing that I'm not in the classroom. I'd probably lose it. But one of the things that I think we need to do a better job of, and I think Kelly would probably agree with this, is that we need to teach better classroom management skills in the teacher prep programs. So like UNF they supply, I think, 80% of the teachers in this area. But we need to go back into these teacher prep schools of education, and make sure that we teach classroom management. What's the right thing to do? What's the wrong thing to do? Mental illness is a big part. One of the things that we did as a family was, actually it was my son who was in San Francisco at the time, realized that they were putting a mental health specialist embedded in every school. And in Duval County, it was a center. So you were acting up, you went to the center. Well, guess what? They weren't going, right? The transportation issues and whatnot. So we started with 12 schools, feeder patterns for Rains and Reval, and put a full-time mental health specialist in the school. So that when Johnny throws the chair across the room, goes crazy, instead of saying to, what's the matter with Johnny, we start saying, what happened to Johnny to make him do that? And these are professionals. I'm certainly not one. But right now, that pilot worked real well. In Duval County, we have a mental health specialist in every single school. And you can bill Medicaid. If it's a mental health specialist versus behavioral health, you can bill Medicaid for poor kids. So a lot of it, the discipline is mental health.
It is.
Would you agree?
Absolutely, and I know that,
Good thing Kelly's here.
COVID has actually made it worse, because we had students staying at home, and we've had families that have been unstable. We've been spending extra time and extra resources, even in our elementary schools, to help with conscious discipline, and even here at Ocean Palms. And so that is a big deal. We do have mental health specialists in our schools, especially our high schools, and we work very closely with Flagler Plus and with St. Augustine Youth Services. But it's a concern, and but I think when Flagler came, and Lady DeSantis, Ron DeSantis' wife, she and the players put $1 million, she kicked it off, but the players and Flagler Health Plus put $1 million in St. Johns County schools just to try to help with that. And we have taken full advantage of it, and we've seen huge decreases by doing so. So it is a problem in the school systems, and my last point is that COVID did make it worse.
It did. It's interesting. I was at a meeting one time several years ago. A Teach for America teacher had gotten Teach for the Year, and I was interviewing her, and I said, okay, well, what's the secret sauce? Teacher of the Year, what's the secret sauce? She said, well, what I do is I don't try to teach my kids anything for the first week. I just want to show them that I love them, and I care for them, and I want the best for them. And I never have a discipline problem after that. It's very interesting. Which goes back to the teacher prep programs on how to teach the teachers, right? Bob, did you have a question?
Well,
since you invited me here.
Do I have a question? First of all, I have to say, I have been so impressed today. What have we been doing this now, 9 months or longer? I don't think we've had anybody close to this good.
Oh, that's very nice of you to say. Hey, I'm free next Friday. I'll come back and pick another topic.
That's kind of my suggestion. Several issues have been raised here. One of the overwhelming impressions I have, and Kelly, you've contributed to this, is it matters to have wealth in your community. St. Johns County is a superb school system in part because most of the people in St. Johns County have a little bit of money. And that makes our school system here diverse in so many different ways in terms of the activities, the programs. Where do teachers want to teach? My guess is more here than in inner city schools where there is great.
Which is a problem.
And nobody's wrong for that.
Right.
There is nothing wrong with that system, but it's one that seems to me we have to grapple with as a nation. Yeah. Now, you want to say something in response to that? So
we do have several Title I schools, and so sometimes people in the north see that we have a lot of affluence, but that isn't all of St. Johns County. So it isn't, but what's so nice is our schools here in the north, P.V. Rawlings, Ocean Palms, Ponte Vedra High, Landrum, they all volunteer. They raise funds for, and they have sister schools to support those schools in the south. And so it is a big difference because those who have are very service-led.
That's fabulous.
Yeah.
That's fabulous.
I just want to say, I don't think it matters what color the student is, what color the human being is. If the home life is dysfunctional, if there is trauma in the home, if there's addiction, if there's criminal behavior, etc., there's so little hope for a child to progress. I don't care what the system tries to do. So, God, how do we reach the parents and teach them?
Yeah, I think I hear that and I agree with it. But by the same token, that kid didn't ask to be born. He showed up, and none of us asked to be born, right? We just show up. Some of us show up with two parents and blessed with resources, and others don't. And so, if that's the case, I think it's upon responsible adults to attack the problem and supplement that. It's a challenge. There's a lot of single family in the inner community. They're working. They don't have time. They themselves are not educated, so they don't know what to do. And that we need wraparound services for that. We need to spend more money with those folks to help them, I think.
But Gary and I talked this morning a little bit about what he might talk about. He brought up the issue of bail bond. the bail system, which is primarily just a cash bail system, which means if you have cash, you get out on bail, and if you don't have cash, you stay in prison until your trial is heard, takes a parent, a poor parent, away from the family, which puts stress on everything about that family, including certainly the kids. Just one element of the system. I want to just say something, and it's a question, but more a comment. I think that the critical race theory debate has become so politicized that we're really losing sight of what's going on. You're right, Kelly. I don't think CRT is taught in St. John's schools, nor do I think it's taught in most schools. CRT, that official thing designed by professors for postgraduate schools. But let's be honest, some form of education about race is being taught, and it should be. It would be silly to ignore the history of race relations in this country. It would be silly to ignore the presence and impact of Jim Crow. I'm sorry, Kelly?
It's in the Florida State Standards.
Yeah. Okay, so the debate about CRT gets lost in the political fighting, when what we really should be doing is saying how best to teach people about our history.
No, we have that.
And if you have it, and that's required?
Good. Mm-hmm.
And so, and the legislative ban on CRT won't change that requirement?
No.
Well, that's bad.
Look, the CRT thing's been politicized here too. I mean, I like Ron DeSantis. I think he's been a good governor, but he's also running for president.
Best line of the night.
The other things that the whole idea of how we teach and support teachers, how we somehow deal with the inequities in the wealth, how that affects kids. Do you know Bob Putnam's book, Our Kids? Do you know Robert Putnam? That all of you read his thing?
I can't remember.
I'll introduce you to him. He talks about the difference between poor kids and rich kids in the communities today, particularly today as opposed to 50 years ago. The poor kids primarily have addiction or incarceration in their families, and it's often a one-parent family. Kelly, do you want to say something to wrap up? And then I think we have to give Gary a chance to go win a golf tournament.
The last thing I want to say is two things you hit on, and I just want to expound upon it. One, our teachers are the best. But with the pandemic, the pivoting to online, pivoting to distance learning, pivoting back to doing both, they're tired. They're tired. So we have to absolutely love our teachers and love on them. Yes, and our nurses, everybody in the schools, because they were frontline workers, but in addition to that, we were always changing. And so they're just tired. So please love on our teachers. And the other piece of it is that it's a misconception to think that because the achievement gap, you do see it in poverty, but it's a misconception to think that our students here in our own community don't need mentors in their lives. And because I volunteer with Young Life and because kids are important to me, sometimes people have the idea that kids just in certain areas need mentors, but all of our kids need mentors. There's a girl who was at Landrum and she was cutting, and her Young Life counselor talked to her and she's like, yes, I have 2 dads, but I don't think my dad's had a conversation with me in a year. So even, in wealthier places, kids need good adult investment, even if it's just 1 week lunch, 1 hour a week having lunch with them. Good role models who just want to listen to them and encourage them. And that's really how you break the difference in the integration as well. Because when you have good role models around kids, they don't care what color, they don't care what they do, they don't care what they did, they just care that somebody cares about them.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, I want to just end with the, whether you agree with everything I said or not, it's good, healthy debate is always good. But, the question is what can I do about it? What can I do about it? Well, we've taken a very active role and used our financial resources and also our time. I spent 8 years on the state board and met once a month around the state of Florida, so it's very time consuming, but it was wonderful. And certainly you can get involved. You can mentor a kid, right? Wouldn't that be great? Mentoring a kid. You can You know, if you have means, you can invest in programs that you think will help kids. And then most importantly, you can vote. You know, you can vote for Kelly or not for Kelly, even depending on how she stands on the issues, right? So far, what I've heard sounds pretty good. But yeah, get involved because education is really important, and it's the future of our country. And it's also the best thing that we can do to make sure everybody realizes their God-given potential.
Before we go, though, I'd like Sally Ann to say something.
We're fairly overwhelmed today. You're not an underwhelming person, Gary. We appreciate it very much. This community especially is filled with intelligence and resources and compassion. And so to hear somebody like you speak is so uplifting, and I think we're all energized by it.
Thank you.
So we thank you very much. And it is the season, so we want you to take this home and put it under your tree. Don't rush to open it.
Is it chocolate?
No. It won't hurt the dog.
But thank you very much.
I know it's not easy for a man to carry a little present out with him, but just carry it.
Okay, I can do it. Thank you. That's very gracious of you. I appreciate it very much. Thank you.